Good afternoon. My name is Matt Arnold. I'm UX Director at Connect 5, a local design company, and I've worked with Wesley Berry on helping get Alt set up. So Wesley, thanks for that. And it's my honor to introduce Nick Scappaticci. Before I give you a little bit about Nick's background and talk to him, I want to first thank everybody from Mission Creek, the festival as a whole, and also, again, Alt as part of that. Today is part of the community programming, which is free and open to the public, so that's great. Also, special thanks for sponsorship and support from University of Iowa's outreach. So thanks for your help. I've had the honor of working with Nick on lots of projects over the past few years. We got to know each other both as professionals and have become friends, so it was great to get him to come to Iowa City and talk about some of the work that his company does. So, and I'm sorry, there's a lot of ringing up here. Is it ringing out there too? Not too tinny. So as Chief Executive Officer, Nick leads TELART in high-level operational and strategic decisions while being involved in the details of project development, execution, and troubleshooting. He's responsible for leading a staff of strategists, designers, technologists, and for creating a cohesive cultural environment for TELART that enables project and career success. Nick studied industrial design at Rhode Island School of Design, or RISD. He's currently a member of the adjunct faculty at RISD, where he teaches interface design and senior studio. So just a little bit about TELART before Nick gets up here. TELART's an international experience design studio. Their vision is to work with design at the frontier of technology in order to give people new ways of exploring and engaging with the world. Their projects combine storytelling with highly complex and experimental technologies. The Smithsonian Museum recently awarded TELART with the top national honor for lasting achievement in American design. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome Nick Scappaticci.
Thanks for reading my first slide for me. Appreciate that. My name is Nick Scappaticci, company called TELART, and we are a product. We do kind of experience design, so this is products, installations, exhibitions. We try to kind of develop them in this kind of rare and extreme kind of high quality experience, and all of our work is really kind of driven by the need to make the invisible visible. In the early days, we were doing kind of web architecture, visualizations, kind of redoing the kind of web and making it tangible and making it real. And as we kind of moved on, we started getting into physical computing, and now you're starting to see, you'll see in our work a kind of convergence of this kind of invisible and tangible and intangible things coming together. Today, though, I want to talk about some of our work that we do in the future, and not work that we're doing in the future, but these kind of future works that we're developing internally. This talk that I'm giving was first done by our head of design. His name is Christian Irving, and so it's evolved a little since, and so you see some of it kind of resonating through that. But also, just kind of thank you for inviting me here. Past couple days have been pretty great, kind of getting to know some of the people that I never got to know when I was here doing some work. So, and thanks for coming out. But before we kind of talk about the future, let's talk about our present, right? We're kind of grappling with this kind of strangeness of the present, this kind of shifting landscape of art, life, technology. Everything is a computer. The internet is everywhere. Interactions are invisible and frictionless. And most of the time, machines are operators, right? And so the role of our discipline is in question, and this kind of long-established kind of models of interaction and are eroding, and everything's kind of converging together. In the late 80s, the U.S. Army War College kind of offered this kind of term for it describes this kind of temporary state of flux on the battlefield called VUCA. Right, and since this word kind of is found in academia and in business, but it stands for kind of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, right? And so, it's basically the structured definition of chaos, right, where everything kind of is changing and the facts on the ground is undefinable and unverifiable, right? And so this is kind of what the character in Pattern Recognition by William Gibson meant when he said kind of fully formed visions of the future unavailable to us in a chaotic present, right? So like there's insufficient now to stand on. And you know, this line, we have no future because our present is too volatile. So, and it's important because chaos kind of affects us all, right? Chaos has repercussions of our sense of agency, our ability to kind of plan, anticipate, and kind of put action into place. And this is not just about kind of battlefield. This is about, you know, politics and economy and society more broadly. And, you know, considering emerging technology trends, you know, it's our job kind of as designers really to design the behaviors of these systems, right? And to make them meaningful and make them useful and make them beautiful, right? But there's these other kind of forces at play, right? So, you know, how can, you know, as an organization, we're trying to figure out, you know, how can we better incorporate these kind of long-term strategies into our work, you know, despite this kind of volatility of our present moment? Or kind of how can we, you know, design with a fixed eye on the horizon? How can we design now, kind of looking out into the distance, right? So, you know, first I'm going to ask you a question like, what do you think about when you think about the future? And we're talking about like 1 year out, you know, maybe, or, you know, 1 generation out, maybe 2 generations out, right? And this is an exercise that we do at the beginning of some of our workshops. And it was invented by this guy, Stuart Candy, who's a futurist that we work with a lot. So you start with one axis, right? And when you think about the future, how optimistic or pessimistic are you about the future, right? Is it kind of rosy or gloomy, right? You know, are children going to be dealing with the destabilizing effects of climate change, you know, the rising sea levels, resource wars? Are we going to be controlled by like these super intelligent AIs? You know, are we going to like be monitored by autonomous like robotic weaponry? You know, or, right, are we going to be, you know, riding around in self-driving cars, right? Are we going to be tended to by robotic butlers, you know, kind of living off universal income, you know, and is it a time of prosperity and peace, you know, where we're living and vacationing and off you know, planet colonies, right? And so, like, just kind of picture where you are right here, right? And now let's add this second axis. And this is the kind of control, right? This is about your control and influence of the future, right? So, you know, how much will you kind of be a part of shaping your own future? And, you know, it's kind of plotting this kind of level of your level of optimism and your kind of level of influence kind of tells us a little bit of, you know, about ourselves and what we kind of our outlook is. And when we're kind of using this in a workshop, you know, we're kind of understanding the kind of attitudes that exist in the room about these kind of different topics that we're talking about. And so, like for me, I'm generally up in here, right? I'm a designer. I feel design empowers us. We're creating kind of these tools for humans to kind of change things and create kind of new opportunities with things, right? But you know, there might be someone in the room who might be down here, might be a little bit more negative. They might, you know, have a very kind of low sense of influence. And then there might be someone else who feels kind of empowered, you know, or kind of has empowered to influence things, but maybe has not such a great view of the world, right? So, and it's important that like all of these perspectives are great. You know, it's not like just because you have a bad or a negative view of the future, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's not a valuable part of a conversation. But it's just identifying where we all stand as a point of discussion, right? So for the past 2 years, we've been working on these kind of large-scale experimental future projects to address this kind of question of organizational change and really kind of the role of government in progress for society. And these projects have been for the Prime Minister of Dubai. And you know, in order to understand this work, you have to kind of understand the context in which this work exists, right? So Dubai is a very young country. You know, it's gone through this kind of radical transformation in the past 45 years. And on the left here is Dubai in 1971, which is right about the time that Sheikh Zayed brought the kind of 7 historically tribal emirates together, right? And on the right there is Dubai in 2015. So, in 2 generations of people, you go from, this third world economy to almost first world conditions, right? Third world economy of like fishermen and pearl divers to basically a kind of, a society that, every single brand you could possibly imagine exists in every store, exists in the world, in this one place. So this kind of, this kind of transformation of society here, this kind of radical transformation is, it kind of points to this kind of culture of progress, right? And it's also a federated benevolent monarchy. And so, you have, on one hand, you have this familiarity with change and progress, and on the other hand, you have like kind of this ability to kind of exercise total authority at almost overnight, right? And so, there's this typical kind of slow bureaucratic process of government, but Dubai is kind of hyper proactive in this way, and they're kind of investing heavily up front, and they're committed to driving kind of innovation and offering their citizens the best. This is Sheikh Mohammed, and one of his mantras is bring the future forward faster, right? And so as a part of this drive for innovation, we've been involved in this initiative called the Museum of the Future. And it's a way to conduct, future foresight or future studies and strategic master planning. And it kind of aimed to kind of realize, communicate, and validate the vision for the country and the vision for the country's future. And what we, how we do this is we create these kind of high fidelity prototypes of plausible future scenarios. And these scenarios try to kind of impact the kind of, anticipate the impact of emerging technologies as they relate to social, political, and economic trends in order to kind of shape policy. Right, and so this year we launched the 4th one, and we start like any other research project would start, and with people that wear glasses and put Post-it notes up walls and use hand gestures, but it's really kind of what we're trying to do is try to define the kinds of conversations that are most important to have right now for the government. And we then take those and we try to kind of develop them into these scenarios. And so together we'll conduct this research and we kind of integrate these tools from future studies and human-centered design, and we kind of bring those 2 together to kind of start this process off. And then it's held at this thing called the Government Summit. And these experiences that we produce are meant to provoke conversation with senior leadership in the government. And they typically try to address kind of these core issues that the government's facing, like healthcare, education, infrastructure. And I want to walk through a few of them, probably an overwhelming number of them, and just kind of show you what we're trying to do there and see some of these experiences. So, we first start with healthcare, and we wonder, like, what are the qualities of healthcare from the perspective of this kind of techno-utopian future that we're presenting? So, healthcare is preventative, it's distributed, and it's holistic, right? And so you might have this, you might have a future where you kind of walk up to your bathroom vanity and there's this unobstructive biometric scanner, and this information is being processed and uploaded to your government health profile, right? And it alerts you when there's a contagious cold at work. It then kind of automatically adds vitamins into your water in order to kind of preventative medicine, right? And we also noticed that obesity is a huge problem in the UAE, and kids spend basically all their time indoors and at malls because it's super hot outside, or at home or doing kind of mobile gaming, right? But so in the future, maybe dropping your kids off at an arcade could be a healthy exercise. So this is an interactive diagnostic game that tracks your biometrics, your heart rate, your blood pressure, kind of the standard, health check stuff, right? It might test your range of motion or your kind of hand-eye coordination. And then again, it's kind of uploading all this data to your government profile. So with this kind of aggregated, portrait of your health, it kind of can predict problem areas and maybe suggest some preventative treatments. I could watch that video all day, so I'll just. And next up, you kind of go to this pharma cafe. It's kind of our vision for the future treatment, right? And it's kind of a cross between a pharmacy and like a juice bar. And, it's kind of this modern apothecary where synthetically engineered plants, are bred with these kind of, to produce high concentrations of beneficial botanical chemicals, which are extracted and kind of concentrated and kind of given, and kind of given to you through like tonics or healing elixirs or kind of these breathable mists here, right? So education. Education is kind of experimental, it's collaborative, and exploratory in the future, right? And for the vision and the future of education, we first kind of use this open source project that was out there, and to kind of vision the future sandbox, right? And it's kind of the model of kind of direct hands-on engagement, where subjects like kind of fluid dynamics and geology and hydrology can be discussed, and kind of in the classroom, you learn intuitively and through real-time interactions with kind of projected content and kind of using programmable matter in your hands. And so, like, what would the future of literacy be for young children in a world that, like, synthetic biology exists, right? How do you kind of project that way kids would learn? And so here children are using kind of techniques of coding. These are obviously not children. Techniques of coding to design kind of synthetic plants for optimal fitness in environments. And then, in this kind of game-like environment, if their plant survives, it gets kind of printed as a trophy almost that gets kind of put in this classroom. And then next is this kind of learning lab, where this is an immersive, self-directed learning environment where kids are kind of exploring the real world through a network of kind of sensors and video feeds and rovers. And in this case, you're with the help of an AI that exists. I think we called it Data, which is not a very unique name to call a robot. But anyway, so they're exploring, they're communicating with members of the UAE Mars settlement, and they're learning about, kind of how life is supported in these off-worlds, and how do you, survive in extreme environments, creating kind of water and food and all of that. So we then kind of looked at, we looked directly at kind of, emerging technologies and, their effect on human agency, right? And so there's kind of decreasing gradient of human agency vis-a-vis kind of technology, right? And, on the left is, the augmented, single person, and then there's a kind of augmented avatar type experience, and then there is this kind of more meta AI that exists around you. And so we're exploring this kind of, this silicone electromechanical augmentations, artificial intelligence, and kind of predictive and advanced robotics. So the human body, what are these kind of characteristics in this silicone kind of society that we're going for, right? And so the human body is mediated, it's mechanized, and it's networked, right? And so here's this kind of personal augmentation spa. And it's kind of this mix between this Apple store and like a health clinic, right? And visitors can peruse like the latest advanced technologies and electromechanical augmentations. And then, you can virtually try these things on and kind of preview life with these upgraded body parts. And so in this world, you would kind of select your augmentation, and here's people trying on one of these. Select these augmentations, you can purchase them, and then walk right in for surgery, right? And so like some of the artifacts we were creating to kind of paint this picture are like in the front here. This is DreamStream, which is, allows for social dreaming, so you can kind of share your dreams with other people, and The thing in the back is basically this kind of, LiDAR for your body. It's this kind of halo of light for you as to kind of, I guess it's called clairvigilance. So, as you're kind of walking around in unfamiliar cities. And we made a bunch of these, and this was really fun to do. I want to show you a couple of the things that we did, because we would not only create these objects, but also create the advertisements and kind of find who the appropriate sponsors were for these things. So this is iShare, and it's it's sponsored by this company called Do, which is a telecommunications provider, and it broadcasts your kind of visual sensory feed, right? And to your friends and your colleagues, and well, we'll watch. It was great. You gotta get those disclaimers in for sure. I want to show a couple more. So this is new knees, right? And this is like re-engineering your lower body and your skeletal muscular system to give you this ability to like jump in a superhuman way. So there's like, maybe you can jump over 5 meters at a time, and there's like a military version which allows you to go really, really far, but there's a civilian version that you can get in this store. All right, I'll show you one more because it's worth it just for the disclaimers. So this is Mood View, and it boosts your social intelligence. So, it gives you these real-time analysis of like what people are thinking about you, and like I have them on now, so I know that you all maybe like what I'm saying right now, but maybe that'll change in a little bit. And it provides feedback of how to act when someone reacts to you, right? Anyway, super fun. So then we, and while these things are, funny and speculative, I mean, some of it's, it's all rooted in research. I mean, you can kind of see now in the market that we're seeing kind of these, emotion detectors. We're kind of seeing robotic splints, and all of these things are kind of, there's little seeds of these ideas happening. So what we're trying to do is really project out, and all of this stuff is, 20, 30, 50 years out into the future. But it kind of gives you some, we kind of make this leap and create this distance between us and these futures to allow people to kind of have a conversation about them. And so we looked at domestic space, and we asked ourselves, what is the future of the home with the presence of these kind of, these kind of virtual members, this kind of virtual world that we're creating? How does the home create a new kind of family? With all of this virtual technology. So, it's augmented, it's empathetic. I know you all can read, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But So we kind of remade the home with kind of AR and AI, right? And so, AI can take on these multiple roles in the house. In this case, this is, kind of a child or a pet, and it's designed to be pretty cute, and, it attaches to you like a puppy, and, it greets you excitingly when you come home. And so because it can kind of control the AR view of your house, it generates, in this case, it's generating this kind of fun lava game to reinforce that kind of bond that it has with you through play. And, just like a dog would bring a ball to you when you get home. And so, in another context, it might take on the form of like a spouse or a partner. And so it notices, when you kind of got home from work and you're a bit stressed, and it wants to kind of change the mood for you. And it reprograms the space into this kind of soothing environment, and you're sitting in your kind of robotically actuated massage chair, and we'll take a look at it. Oops. So, and finally, here's your kind of virtual nanny who's entrusted to take care of your child. And it, hums this kind of lovely Emirati lullaby, and, it generates this AR nightlight and actually is rocking your baby through this robotic cradle. Not a real baby. So now let's kind of move on to the way we're governed in society at large. So governance is, ambient, and it's ethical, and it's algorithmic, right? And, at the heart of the government is this government data processing facility called the UAE Hypermind. And it's a super intelligent computer kind of trained with this collective moral code, and it's entrusted to kind of act on our behalf. Right? And these kind of swirling points of data, of real-time information that's being processed and assessed, and actions are taking place in response to kind of how we've trained this computer to react. So at a glance, you can kind of see these, there's also this human-readable kind of part to this, because this super intelligent AI system here is monitoring, several data points. It's acting on our behalf, and this is tech kind of intervening with this kind of VUCA world that we're projecting, and it's also reporting to the kind of attendants that are standing around it to make sure and they understand what the computer and what this kind of processing center is currently doing. And so here it's trying to kind of responsibly manage the economy. And it asks a series of questions that's rooted in kind of these ethical scenarios. And based on your choices that you make, it's assessing your ideal role in the economy. And so both in terms of kind of greater utility and, for yourself and, your greater good, and giving you a sense of fulfillment, and also this personal satisfaction. And at the end of the interview, it offers you a job in this kind of interconnected, massively interconnected economy. And I think this person is going to be, what are they? Yeah, so a chaos miner. That's this person's job in the future. We recently updated this, and this thing called the Moral Machine, and we put it at WEF Davos, and, it's modified to address more of these kind of global issues where, systems are entrusted even with more responsibility and act in the best interests of society. And so the last one that we did most recently is about climate change, and climate change and what the UAE's role is in kind of affecting climate change. And they see it as an opportunity. They're thinking about it as, kind of resilience, and they're trying to reimagine what climate change is. And so, the basis for this is that the world kind of crosses this threshold where there's now not enough CO2 in the air, in the atmosphere, and if we, even if we stopped emitting, all of this pollution today, we're still going to start to experience this kind of severe climate change in our lifetime, which isn't so far off. So like, how will we secure fresh water? How will we eat? And how will we live? And will we use biomimicry and synthetic biology to create giant, big, floating jellyfish desalination plants? Are we going to, our community is going to share automated indoor farms that provide on-demand food that fits kind of individuals' health and lifestyle? Are there going to be these kind of self-building units being dropped in any environment in order to kind of grow new infrastructure and housing that kind of fit and are tuned to these local conditions, these changing local conditions? At the end of the experience at this museum last year, we capped it off with this kind of manifesto that would, the whole point is that we're kind of driving and soliciting information from these officials and trying to figure out where their head is and how some of what we're presenting might have maybe changed, their commitment. Where, at the end of this, they're kind of basically committing to wanting to create more policies on either, water or kind of food or for kind of infrastructure and living in the cities. And this data that is being collected is actually being used to generate a report for the government to issue to everyone at the conference to give them a sense of where people's interests were and what are some of the kind of the biggest topics as far as climate change is concerned. And they may want to buy a huge jellyfish desalination plant. I'm sure that's the case. But, all of this work, that we do in Dubai is there's a huge team in order to create this kind of high-polished, high-profile stuff. Tellart has been driving the kind of creative and the kind of production of it, but, I encourage you to look up, any one of these brilliant people that we work with, and they're all great and been working with us for years on this stuff. And so this work that we're doing for them is proven to be so valuable that the government is now kind of investing in a permanent kind of museum and called the Museum of the Future, and a government foresight initiative called the Dubai Future Foundation to help kind of drive progress in their country. And we are continuing to partner with them to develop the content and these scenarios and develop a kind of format for how to kind of better incorporate these kind of long-term strategies into practice. And this has really been, in thinking about this work that we're doing, kind of the real big question is how do we take what we're doing in these kind of future-scaping way and bring it into kind of these strategies that we're doing now. And so over the course of this work, we've kind of learned a few things about how we position this stuff for ourselves that I wanted to share with you. So, the one thing is that the future, futures are a powerful and aspirational kind of mode of critique, and it can frame critique with kind of intentionality and positivity, and it can transform critique into proposal, and therefore it's a powerful force of change. And so, one of the central tenets of future studies is that we have many different futures and that we can shape the future through the choices that we make, right? And design for us is all about making choices. And those choices and our choices can help influence those futures. So a transformative potential of collective imagination, right? This is probably like way too profound for me to say, but this is collective imagination is a powerful force, and I think it can change society as a whole, right? And so, but it also like, within organizations, whether it's like a project team or, you're launching a product, through this kind of debate and collective agreement on the core principles that we're facing in our present, we can define this kind of appropriate path to this better future, right? And so William Gibson said, and one of his quotes is that the future is here, right? It's just not evenly distributed, right? And so that and that describes the future in this kind of as this monolithic force that we can't do anything. We're just these passive kind of takers of whatever the future holds for us. But I think we prefer this quote by Sheeler Jasenhoff, who's a science and technology professor, where we actually kind of live in these massively parallel, like a massively parallel present, right? And we have this set of very diverse sets of futures, right? And and transformations in society through kind of science and technology will have as much to do with kind of the cultural and our cultural identity and our shared aspirations as the opportunities with technology themselves, really. And so another thing we like to do, another thing that's important to us is that there's a value of making things real, tangible, and even visceral, right? And prototyping early and often is a vital part of our process. Going from these kind of abstract ideas, erecting these kind of scaffolding of constraints around those ideas, and testing their realization, right? And because in these projects where we're creating these kind of integrated, multi-touch point, interactive experiences that are seamlessly kind of bridging physical objects, screens, immersive AR and VR experiences, and these map projection rooms, and every touch point plays this role. And to communicate this kind of complicated message, and also contributes to this sense of immersive depth, right? And by making it real, we're creating a space for people to kind of directly engage with each other, right? And around these artifacts and through these experiences. And we purposely kind of put in these kind of tension points in this work, and between this kind of seductive and maybe repulsive kind of views of the future, right? And to elicit these emotions, and because we're making what drives some of these decisions is emotion. So we're trying to capture that moment, right? And we're giving these decision makers, this opportunity to inhabit the futures, react to it. This is the senior leadership of Dubai sitting around the sand table, and we're targeting their emotions because we think they're going to make these decisions ultimately emotionally as well, right? And so in order to do this, we need this new tool set for navigating VUCA, right? And we've been exposed to a bunch of them. There's a whole set of kind of planning tools for future studies and these kind of scenario mapping methods. And so, but we're a design studio. We consult with clients on super interesting, but also kind of very pragmatic design problems, right? And in ways that I think everyone would recognize in like apps and websites and things like that, right? But these projects have exposed us to this whole new set of tools, right? And these kind of methods that you can use that are out there. And future studies is a discipline in its own right. It has established practices and methods, and it was formalized in the 60s and 70s by Shell Corporation. And so this kind of 50 years of history in this discipline, we can take these tools and we can adapt them because change with emerging technologies is happening so rapidly that we really can no longer wait for something to be real in order to understand its implications and how to design around them, right? And so maybe this suggests this kind of new method for integrating long-term strategies into near-term product development, right? And maybe we're going to call it like applied futures is a whole new kind of thing that we're all doing. But really, this is just a method. It's a method of design, and it's like the futures kind of applied, or future studies applied to design. But it might look like, on the left are these kind of characteristics of the product design, I'm sorry, the right. Yes. There are these, the characteristics of the typical kind of applied product and service design process. And on the other side are the characteristics of kind of future foresight planning. And we can, start to create, we can start to create a new way of thinking, right? That manages to kind of take this kind of wildness and expansive, long-term projective thinking of strategies, and with this kind of more pragmatic, human-centered, rigorous applied design process, right? And so we're kind of exploring, as a company, we're exploring these new territories in the public and private sector, by making interactive objects and environments to kind of validate these communications, validate and kind of communicate early stage concepts, right? And at Telart, we're using this mission right now for what we're doing. So making the invisible visible, the intangible tangible, and the future inhabitable. And really kind of our work with futures started with this project. And this is the Chrome Web Lab, and it's a, it was a traditional exhibition that was untraditional in the fact that when people experienced it, they didn't have to be in the museum to fully experience the power of this exhibition. It was fully connected to the web. It was open 24 hours a day. It was open for an entire year, and people from all over the world could connect to these objects in the museum, play musical instruments, collaborate on a worldwide scale with people in the museum, kind of doing and marking and changing things, right? And most recently, we worked on, with a team with Toyota, working on this concept car called Concept I, right? And Concept I kind of pays attention to everything inside and outside of the car. It uses the kind of knowledge of the driver to anticipate its needs. It kind of knows, it kind of is producing action before the user is even aware of it, and kind of enabling this Japanese sense of hospitality in the car. And so it's an interface, it's a liaison, it's a middleman, and it's your pal. But so, like, Toyota is wondering, how safe is really safe enough, right? How, society tolerates, a lot in human error, right? But what do we expect from machines? I think we expect machines to be better. So if you could make autonomous cars twice as safe as human error car accidents, we would have 17.5 thousand deaths a year. And is that acceptable? Is that like an acceptable amount for a car that is driven by a robot, right? And so historically, we show basically zero tolerance for, injury or death caused by these flaws in machines. So Toyota's approach to autonomous vehicles is where the passenger and the car are in a constant dialogue, right? And it has this personality and kind of can communicate to the driver through ambient light, through sound, through haptics. And so this is just an example of kind of product development and R&D side of what we do at Telart. And it's also just another example of how high fidelity prototyping can kind of interrogate and illustrate kind of long-term strategies for kind of like more of a mid-range speculative future. And so looking at an even closer horizon, right? And although this is, this may not be the future of 10 years from now, for this company, it was a new future for them as a company, because they were trying to aim towards a different version of themselves. When we talk about these diverse futures, they were on this trajectory where they were seen as this regional this regional carrier in Russia, and they got this opportunity to kind of open up worldwide. And so they had to shift the perception of their customers into a new future, right? And so we worked with this ad agency to, who did a lot of the promotional stuff, but to develop this activation that immersed people in the new potential of this company for them. I want to show you this video.
Потому что я его никогда не видела. Я никогда не был в Барселоне, а мой друг уже живет там 17 лет.
Когда я думаю о Риме, ну, первым делом представляется картинка Колизея.
У меня в голове Барселона – это место, где все улыбаются.
Я думаю, что океан, он синий, черный, желтый, солнечный, белый, спокойный.
The Imagination Machine is a game of skill where participants use biosensors on their head to fly a virtual plane towards their dream destination. Our brains run on electricity, and by placing sensors in key locations around the skull, we're able to measure those electrical impulses. And by combining them, we can create a profile that can act as input to software, where a person using their imagination can control a virtual airplane flying around a map. If you are able to concentrate, you'll stay tightly on the perfect flight path, get all the way there, and win a ticket to actually go there. It's really interesting to think about people dreaming of a place that they want to go that they haven't been to before, because they'll have to create a mental image of that place and concentrate on it for the length of the game.
Представлял Барселону, представлял Испанию, представлял этот особняк, где живет мой друг Андрей.
В какой-то момент подумала о том, что мне сегодня надо еще молока купить там, и тут все пошло коту под хвост.
Я в абсолютном шоке, просто я не верю, я не верю.
И выиграл билет до Лондона и обратно. Обязательно не верит. Кстати, скажите жене.
You know, the old saying that if you can dream it, you can do it, in this case is actually true. If you can actually concentrate on your dream place, you can go there.
Nice. Everyone wants to know, did she win a ticket? Did that woman win a ticket? Keep it guessing. No, and working kind of in this interdisciplinary way with both the kind of ad agency and us and the airline kind of coming together and trying to develop how we were going to project this new future for them and how to activate it, how to make that future real so that people could experience it was really fulfilling, because obviously at the end of the day, people were getting kind of airline tickets that changed their own future, which was kind of interesting as well. And so in some ways, you know, we're at TELART, we're kind of already operating at this in this kind of futures practice, and we're trying to navigate this kind of space in between, which is full of this, you know, this ton of potential for making some real change and actually kind of provoking action, right? And you know, but to think about kind of futures practice and design is kind of redundant, right? Because design is inherently future gazing. You know, and it's just a question of what horizon and what motive you're operating on. And so the word design comes from the word designate, which is to kind of sign or to mark out and to describe some pending thing, to conjure up the future from materials of the present through the physical act of drawing. And you know, and the sense of kind of design isn't inseparable from strategy, right? Because design is to look forward, right? And is to plan and to make choices, right? And to implement. And so it's actually already the future, but just applied. Thanks. So, I guess they're going to answer some questions. I think that's what we're doing now? Okay.
Time for a couple questions. Let me bring the mic to you. It'll be better for the recording.
Hi. So you kind of skimmed over Gibson's critique that, the future is already here but unequally distributed. Do you have any kind of actions towards a more distributed future? I mean, I noticed that like in your Dubai case, the avatar was always male. You work with marketers who typically only care about people who already have a lot of assets in future. So I'm wondering what kind of activities are going in that vein.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as designers, we're not, I'm not inventing the future, right? I'm creating, with each client and with each scenario, we're acting as kind of a translator and a mediator, and putting tools in place to help kind of guide the decision making. We're not going to go to Dubai and change its trajectory or its culture and infuse it with something arbitrary that doesn't make sense to who they are and where they're going, but we're going to supply tools to help create more preferable futures for them, right? And so I think the way to kind of get at these kind of, these diverse futures is to just have enough tools and have enough methods to kind of create different versions for comparison, right? You never just kind of go for the one version of it. You try to create comparative versions to then understand the space in between. And understanding that space in between of this particular version of a concept to this particular version is where the discussion can happen about whether or not one is more preferable than the other. So I don't know if it answered your question, but the characters, the avatars were, they were male. It's a male kind of dominated society, although that's changing. And so progress is happening rapidly there. And I think some of that change will inherently follow, for sure. And I think there is, with this work, an opportunity for a shifting future for them. And I think they're now being empowered with this method to actually do that for themselves, so they can kind of see these other ways that they might project their identity and have a discussion about it now to get over all that kind of hang-ups they have about their own history.
Cool, we can probably get one more if somebody has something.
Yes, when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing the future, and it seems to be in like sort of a densely populated city.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, when you travel through a lot of the nation, it's sort of a remote site. So we were just hiking in Arkansas, and you realize it's beautiful there, but it's very remote. And then you almost wonder, what could you do in a future like that? Or some towns like in Iowa where factories have moved away, land is cheap. It's almost like the early 40 acres and a mule. You could go there and make a whole new future utopia.
Yeah.
And have you thought about what you can do in a remote site?
I kind of don't want to change those places. I want to keep them. I actually want to protect them for being what they are. But technology doesn't have to be so over the top, and it doesn't have to. We don't have to all of a sudden put sensors all over the city to take advantage of technology. And I think it's the appropriate use. Using technology in an appropriate way is really our mission. And we never really, and Matt Arnold, who introduced, we were talking about this the other day, we're never really leading with, what cool, crazy thing can we do in this one place? It's really about getting at the question, and the solutions kind of follow there. We never lead with technology. We never try to kind of, overreach and take a beautiful place and just activate it because it's not activated in the way that this like techno-utopian world is going. But there is an appropriateness that might be useful, that we just have to find out what question we want to ask about its usefulness.
Great. Could everybody join me in thanking Nick one more time for coming to join us?